last few years have graced us gamers with a slew of hits, but the most interesting games are definitely the ones that came out of nowhere and surprised us with their level of quality or ingenious designs. With this feature, we take a look at 15 of the biggest smash hits that really came out of nowhere and took the industry by storm. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. Helldivers 2. Arrowhead Studios delivered an absolute smash hit with Helldivers 2, a co-op game where players team up to fight waves upon waves of enemies across the backdrop of alien planets. Many of its ideas can be traced back to live service games like The Division's PvP mode, but the game's ability to induce a constant sense of chaos as you try to complete the objectives without veering into frustrating territory is what makes it so addictive in the first place.
Joining the fray.
The gameplay has a knack for crafting some amazing stories, and that power of shared experiences and personal stories is what made it such a big thing. Hi-Fi Rush. We wouldn't really imagine a developer of games like The Evil Within creating a brightly colored rhythm game, but Tango Gameworks actually did that with Hi-Fi Rush, and just shadow dropped it out of nowhere. And the best part is that it all works beautifully, despite the game being something that's well out of the developer's comfort zone. Everything from the fleshed out world that operates on a tempo to a diverse range of rocking tracks and a combat loop that's more rewarding than it is punishing. Hi-Fi Rush makes for a great first rhythm game for fans to get into this niche genre.
Lift is running a bit late.
I'm sure they'll be here.
Palworld. Palworld felt like an interesting contrast of genres with initial trailers showcasing cute Pokemon-like creatures holding realistic guns against the backdrop of lush green planescapes. And when it was released in early access recently, fans absolutely lapped it up thanks to a solid set of mechanics that work pretty well in conjunction with one another. Sure, there are a few rough edges here and there, but the sheer creativity of it all is what makes it so endearing in the first place. A Plague Tale: Innocence. A Plague Tale: Innocence might feel like a cheap knockoff of The Last of Us at first glance, and while that notion is true on some level, it isn't entirely indicative of the entire story. Set against the backdrop of one of the darkest times of history, the story of Amicia and Hugo is an emotionally charged tale that features an equal share of heartfelt moments and adrenaline-pumping set pieces, which, combined with the wonderfully well-realized characters, makes for an incredibly exciting experience through and through. Stray. Stray might not be a sprawling epic or even a thrilling ride, but its unique concept of putting you in the paws of a stray cat was apparently more than enough reason for hundreds of thousands of fans to just want to pick it up. The puzzles are pretty simple, but interesting world building and a snappy runtime that never lets the player get bored of the mechanics is what made it such a big deal when it was released back in 2022. Demon's Souls. The game that started it all. Demon's Souls, first released for the PlayStation 3 back in 2009, surprised everyone with its brutal difficulty and intimidating boss battles. Featuring excellent art style and an eerie atmosphere, I mean, who can forget the crazy Valley of Defilement, Demon's Souls went on to become an unexpected hit among players. Although later Souls games will take the genre further in different ways, Demon's Souls still remains a memorable experience. If you have a PlayStation 5, you can try the excellent remake, which was released back in 2020. Lies of P. Lies of P is developer NeoWiz's take on the Souls formula, and while the initial showings were definitely promising, it wouldn't come as a surprise if the final result would rank amongst the dozens of similar From Software titles that keep releasing left, right, and center. But that skepticism was proven wrong, and Lies of P managed to actually deliver a worthy Souls-like with excellent level designs, memorable boss battles, and a couple of unique mechanics all of its own. Baldurs Gate 3. Larian's latest Baldurs Gate 3 is a game that has huge ambitions, and it would be safe to say that it has set a new benchmark for RPGs in this generation. Baldurs Gate 3 features a complex web of mechanics that work well in cohesion with one another, and there's a bunch of distinct possibilities right from the story endings to different playstyles and so much more. And the attention to detail in each aspect is the major drawing factor which makes Baldurs Gate 3 such a fun time. Valheim. Valheim launched into early access back in 2020, and it instantly became a smash hit with hundreds of thousands of fans flocking to make a living in a procedurally generated set of worlds. Valheim features interesting boss battles, a high level of replayability, and memorable boss battles, but what makes it stand out amongst the crowd is a very tangible sense of progression as you get stronger and stronger with each different biome you clear. Lords of the Fallen. Talking more about Souls games that managed to win the hearts of hundreds of fans, we have Lords of the Fallen. Released last year, Lords of the Fallen thrust players into an appropriately murky dark fantasy setting and tasked them to take on brutal bosses and trudge through overwhelming odds. Add to that an excellent world-shifting system and some gorgeous visuals, and Lords of the Fallen becomes an unmissable game for fans of Soulsborne releases. Dave the Diver. Dave the Diver is the kind of game that never fails to surprise the player. It's a weird mishmash of genres ranging from farming simulation to adventure and much more, and the fact that it all works beautifully in a cohesive fashion makes it such a great time. It's a game that's bursting at the seams with its creativity, and there are more than a few fans who took note of this one. Phasmophobia. Blending together a horror experience in a multiplayer format is definitely a tough task, but Phasmophobia aces that with its excellent atmosphere and clever design. Phasmophobia was released at a time when friends were isolated from one another, and the sense of camaraderie that arises from trudging through decrepit locations and taking up tasks together is something that brought us closer to one another during such challenging times, which is one of the biggest reasons behind Phasmophobia's runaway success. The Forest. Survival games are a dime a dozen these days, but unlike Games' smash hit, The Forest managed to stand out amongst the barrage of similar contemporaries thanks to its excellent understanding of what makes a game of this ilk tick. The Forest features brutal survival mechanics, and the scenarios it puts you through force you to be dynamic in your approach and come up with interesting solutions to the problem at hand. And that is what makes it a game that's worth spending dozens and dozens of hours in. Last Epoch. The recently released hack-and-slash action RPG Last Epoch took the video gaming industry by storm, boldly making a name for itself in a genre. Last Epoch's primary reason for success is its flexibility in build crafting, and its ability to appease both the casuals who don't want to dive deep and veterans alike. In addition to this, Last Epoch also features and offers plenty of valuable loot as you progress through the game's bevy of dungeons. And that engaging hook of player progression is another major drawing factor for the game. Rocket League. Driving an abnormally large ball into a goalpost while seated in a car might just sound like someone's wildest dream, and the developer made that dream come true with Rocket League. And despite a few inherent frustrations that come with this intriguing yet unwieldy concept, Rocket League manages to be a greatly fun time that becomes even better if you have a few friends to play alongside as you make memorable stories of last-minute victories and defeats alike. And with that, we reach the end of this video. Have anything to say? Let us know in the comments below. Also, we upload new videos every single day on GamingBolt, so please consider subscribing as it really helps us out. Thanks for watching.